Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth week of the Cardio-ECHO Clinic Weight Management and Behavior Change Cases and Discussions. I'm Lauren Worcester. I'm filling in for Jesse Lewis, who is our clinic coordinator. Just a few reminders: you can enter your name and practice in the chat feature to record attendance, and you can use the chat feature at any time to ask questions or contribute. And of course, always welcome to hop on video and hop in via audio as well. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Rao.
Thank you, Lauren, and thanks to everyone for joining us for week number 4. We have 2 great cases from Kelly and Dr. Keller this morning, and Chris has a wonderful presentation as well. Our discussants will be Karen, Kathleen, and Chris. So these are our disclosures. You can read Dr. Taylor's disclosure here. Once again, a reminder to use patient-centered language. As I've said many times, this takes practice. And Chris, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Appreciate the opportunity to speak again, this time talking about setting dietary goals and trying to foster behavior change. I always kind of make a joke with my colleague when we're trying to go for the next grant, and I always say our biggest challenge is to try and find somebody in primary care who needs to improve their diet. It's a pervasive challenge that we face regularly, and what I want to talk today is a little bit about some different strategies that we can use to address dietary behavior change. So here are our learning objectives. So anyone who has written a grant has learned that the first step in writing a grant is not writing. And the second step in writing a grant is not writing, as it is planning and determining what are the challenges that we face and what's the gap, and then how do we figure out a plan to address that. The same thing we have to address when we look at dietary behavior change and how we can facilitate behavior change of something that everyone does every day, several times a day, often without thinking about what they're consuming, why they're consuming it, how they're consuming it, the levels of what they do, how they do, and why they do it. So a few aspects that we really have to start thinking about at the very outset is one, things that we've talked about, assessing their willingness and urgency to change. A lot of times they're referred to a dietitian. Well, this is somebody I want you to talk to. The dietitian asks, so why are you here? Well, my doctor wants me to see you and wants me to change my diet. So we really have to kind of understand how much do they feel like lifestyle behavior is a part of their actual medical treatment? Is this something that they have to do, something like they should do? So first, we really have to understand what page they're on and how willing they are to make changes. And when we have to get over some of the ambivalence that Dr. Warner had spoke about last week, we really have to get them to a place where they're willing to make changes, understand the depth of the commitment that they have, and then how can we use that as a starting point? Understand their behaviors themselves. And I could ask the whole group to give me a thumbs up. How many people had coffee this morning as part of your morning routine? And of the people I saw, I've got two of the 6 of us that are showing that did that, had coffee this morning. Which means 4 out of the 6 of you, my message does not resonate. So our ideas that we have around what we know is linked to obesity, what dietary behaviors are linked to excessive energy intakes that can lead to weight gain, aren't behaviors that everyone does. So we have a tendency to rely on kind of our tried and true background information. And if I want to focus on coffee consumption, I've now tuned out 60% of my audience. So really understanding what people eat and what those foods are give us a much better gateway rather than kind of broader overarching statements that may not resonate. And we often kind of get to, I want you to reduce sugars and I want you to reduce salt. And generally people are less aware about where these nutrients come from. They eat foods and not nutrients. So our ability to, if we're going to focus on calories, we're going to focus on sugar, to be able to translate our kind of dive into their behaviors related to the foods as opposed to just the nutrients. And one of the other areas that I think, especially for those that may be getting referrals, is to get the additional support before you start. When we had done some work with primary care patients and referring them to dietitians, our qualitative work afterwards, a lot of the patients said, I know I should change. I know I should change my diet. I know it's important, but I didn't really think about doing it until my primary care provider said, this is important, this is a priority, and I think you should take action. And that was the kind of impetus they needed to say, this is something I should do to versus something I really need to do. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at strategies to promote weight loss and identifying how diet really plays a role, we have to start with the understanding of the purpose of food for an individual. Diet, nutrition, meals, eating serve a purpose to fuel our bodies. They provide the energy that we need. They're also fun. They're social engagements. We have a lot of social events that are really surrounding how we gather for meals, how we gather for with food as kind of a central element. Or is it something else? Is it out of boredom? Is it a coping mechanism? So there are lots of different reasons why people consume food. And we need to bring that to a level of consciousness, because then it helps us understand what are they eating, why are they eating, when are they eating, how are they eating? And that gives us the strategies to be able to create a more targeted approach for them. One of the other key strategies that I think is important is the know when to say when. It was a campaign for other lifestyle behaviors, but in reality, it's knowing when you're hungry, knowing when you're full, and considering portion control as a way to help us limit how much we consume. A lot of times we will see individuals who will eat relatively quickly, and then what they're able to do is kind of overeat past their fullness cues. So really letting hunger guide our eating behaviors. And if we're not hungry, making the determination, am I wanting to eat because I'm hungry, or am I wanting to eat because I'm looking for something to do, or because I'm stressed, and then how can I manage these? And the third strategy that I really kind of wanted to bring forward is a lot of the work that I do is around dietary intake patterns and how people eat and when people eat, and about making meals and snacks purposeful. I think if we gave individuals, tell me what a typical breakfast would look like, they could define it for you. Tell us what a typical lunch would look like, and they could pretty much define that for you around what the foods are. If you ask them about dinner, it's going to be a much larger intake. It tends to get the lion's share of the intakes for the day, and they're going to describe that differently. But if you say snacks are going to look completely different than any of those other meal intake descriptions that you get. So how those meals and snacks contribute to the day: one, our potential to overeat at dinner for that kind of large meal dinner mentality, maybe one of those areas, but then how snacks really contribute to the total day's intake, become those kind of hidden calories that occur. Next slide, please. So really, to personify this, what I wanted to do was I took some of our national consumption data, and I was looking at this. The blue bars are how many calories, what percent of the day's calories come from different food groups. So we have milk and dairy, protein foods, mixed dishes, grains, snacks and sweets are our snack foods. And the reddish orange bars, pardon my partial red green color blindness, those are the calories that we get from snacks, from the different food types. And we have a tendency to kind of say, well, why don't we cut out on the mayo that you put on your sandwich and the sugars that you put in your coffee? But if you look at the amount of energy that they're contributing, it's really a small proportion of what we eat in a day. So if you're able to get somebody to cut down their mayonnaise, you might be able to get them to cut this much of their calories down to this much of their calories. Where can we find those impactful consumption patterns? You look at the total day, and mixed dishes are the top source of calories. How can we change those casseroles? How can we change the consumption of how much of a casserole we consume? That is going to have, we can make small changes within something that we eat regularly to have a greater impact. And if you look at the snacking, the blue bars along the bottom, our total fat sources in snacking are primarily coming from snacks and sweets, and the same for added sugars. So with snacking accounting for roughly a quarter to a third of our daily intake, depending on the target populations, we're getting a lot of our calories for the day from foods that offer less nutritional value. So where we can start to target a little bit more of where are they getting their calories, where are they getting them from meals, where are they getting them from snacks, and then how can we make tweaks to that pattern can give us much more bang for our buck. Next slide, please. So a few areas that we can look as, I always get questions about if I could measure one lab value, get nutritional status, what would it be? It's an impossible question. And the other question I get on the plane is if I could eat one food to be healthy, what would it be? But looking at diet quality is really about nutritional composition. It's really about food groups. The foods that we eat and that are personified here by my plate are clustered together by the nutrients they're providing us. Fruits and vegetables are going to be more in our vitamins and minerals. Protein is going to provide protein, some fat to our diet, zinc. So our nutrients are clustered into our food groups. And one of the trends that we're seeing, especially now in weight management, is basically the omission of food groups. You can't eat this food group because it's related to obesity. And creating this story that energy reduction does not automatically relate to nutritional adequacy. So as we continue to cut calories and as we try to cut food groups out of our diet, what we're doing is taking out that diversity that we need to meet all of our nutritional intakes or nutritional needs. One of the other factors that we can look as a quick marker, higher intakes of energy dense foods that are going to have higher sources of energy with or without nutrient contributions. So things like soda are common concerns that we have among our cases, that we're getting lots of calories in, but we're not getting a lot of the other nutrients that we may need. Another factor related to diet quality, skipping meals, is one that I've seen from our data. Individuals who skip meals are more likely to get calories from snacks. And as we've seen with the snacking intakes, the snacks are of lower diet quality. So skipping meals, we're more likely to overcompensate in that snacking time. And then looking at the composition of those snack intakes themselves. Because they are contributing a considerable amount for the day. So if you feel like you're doing well on your 3 square meals and then things are derailing during your snack times, those are an opportunity that you can identify where those, well, I felt like I was doing really well because I'm eating salads for lunch and I have smaller portions at dinner, but the snacking times might be the thing that is still creating the challenge. So taking the next steps, how do we translate this from getting a better understanding about what they do so we can create create a strategy that works for them. First, we really do need to open the door, as Dr. Rao and Dr. Warner talked about the last few weeks. How do we open the door to that conversation? Because food is very personal. And people eat a lot of the foods because they like a lot of the foods that they eat. And when we try to make those changes, in some ways, we're taking away some of those social elements. We're taking away some of those personal elements. So starting that conversation on a respectful note, identifying what their past successes and challenges are. What is it that they've done well? And how is it that when they've attempted those in the past and faced challenges, what were the what were their triggers that created that challenge, that created that problem, and how can we problem solve around that? And then identify the small steps to build confidence. Sometimes we can get a little overzealous and indicate everything that you're eating is bad, and I'm going to wipe the slate clean and hand you a new list of foods to consume. So how can we identify the smaller steps that they can make that are going to have some impact, give them some success in making behavior change, seeing some of these outcomes, and then be able to use that to build from there. The one caveat is try not to tackle their favorites immediately. The one thing that you know they really love, don't take that away at the very beginning. Start with some things that they're willing to make changes and see how that goes. And now we don't have to take it as an approach of we have to take away everything that's bad, but how can we now modify the portions, eat less of that, allow you to still continue to have it and enjoy it, but to be able to make changes around the larger scope that will help things get better without feeling like you're being deprived from what you really love to eat. And know your limitations and refer. So if you have someone who has more challenges around access to food, has more challenges around really being able to make clear and healthy choices, needs more education, needs more information, then you can accomplish within the time that you have. Use that as your chance to champion the need for them to make change, and then refer them to those who have that ability and that time to be able to do that. Or set aside more time at a future time to say, I want you to think about what things are you're most likely to be able to change, and then how can we help you make that change the next time. So with that.
Thank you so much, Chris. Great presentation. Any questions for Chris before we move on to our cases? Okay, I had a question and something, I don't think there's any magic solution to this, but I've struggled with it for more than 20 years, and that's the issue of underreporting. So in our Fit or Me program, Jim and I ask our patients to walk us through a typical day, and we break it down into half-hour increments. And they throw in things like, I brushed my teeth, I got up, I got the kids ready for school, which we listen to, trying to discern some intake. But, even then, we find that somebody who has obesity is consuming 300 calories a day, according to them. They didn't have breakfast, they didn't have lunch, and they had a rice cake for dinner. What is your perspective on that? How do you manage that issue? We've just kind of been rolling with it. And saying, well, okay, that's interesting. Some people are very candid about what they consume, but others are not. But we don't have a really effective way of dealing with it.
It is always a challenge, and it's a challenge within obesity, but it's a challenge kind of across the board. When we're dealing with self-reported data, we have to figure out the best ways that we can capture what we can capture. The interview gives them the ability to share, but if they're not comfortable sharing, or if they may hide information, partially it becomes what we need is a realistic picture so that we can help you. Sometimes those types of statements take away the judgment that they feel around what did I consume and how does this play out. That can be one of the other strategies we're starting to see a little bit more is even along the food log side. Before you come in, I want you to take pictures of what you're eating, because everybody posts pictures about their food, and now everyone starts to get engaged around the food thing. So one is take pictures of your food environment and take pictures of what you've eaten. And now it becomes I got a chance to show you all the pictures of what I did while I was out. And now it becomes a much more active and engaging thing, rather than you're trying to get a recall from me so you can judge my food intake. And it might add a social element that allows them to be a little bit more candid about what they're consuming. And you kind of see the scenario, you get a lot from the context of the image, and that might help.
Fantastic discussion, everyone. I think we need to go back to Lauren for a moment.
A reminder that you can watch the recordings of all of the clinics at cardio.org. You just need to make an account as it's gated, and you will also be able to view past clinics if you make an account. So you can do that at cardio.org. And a reminder that the post-clinic survey will be emailed to you following the clinic. And if you could finish that and submit it by tomorrow at 5 p.m., we greatly appreciate the feedback. Don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything. And like I said, Jessie will be back on Monday if you need anything from her. With that, we'll close today and just thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a great week. Bye-bye.